Elena Torres never imagined that answering a Craigslist ad would lead to standing in front of a judge in a courthouse that smelled like old wood and broken dreams, about to marry a complete stranger. The ad had been straightforward enough. Seeking U.S. citizen for marriage arrangement. Compensation, $50,000, legal and discreet. She had laughed at first, scrolling past it twice before reality hit her like a sledgehammer. Her mother's medical bills were drowning them. The collection agencies called 3 times a day. Her 2 jobs as a bookkeeper for a local restaurant and weekend shifts at a grocery store barely kept the lights on. $50,000 would change everything. That was how she found herself sitting across from Brandon Burke in a coffee shop 3 weeks ago, her hands wrapped around a mug she couldn't afford but needed for the courage. He was not what she expected. Most people would call him devastatingly handsome, with dark hair that looked professionally styled even though he kept running his fingers through it, and blue eyes that seemed to see right through her nervous facade. He wore an expensive watch and a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I appreciate you coming," he had said, his voice deep and measured. "I know this is unconventional. That is one word for it." Elena had tried to keep her voice steady. "Why me?" "You must have had other responses." 47, actually. Brandon leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "But you were honest in your email. You did not try to oversell yourself or ask for more money up front. You told me about your mother, about why you need this. That matters to me." "And why do you need this?" She had met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated despite the obvious power imbalance between them. He had paused, considering. "I have been working in the United States for 6 years on a work visa. I built something here, something that matters to me. My visa situation has become complicated and I am facing deportation back to England. I have tried every legal avenue. This is my last option. What do you do?" Elena asked. "I run an investment firm, Burke Capital Management." He said it casually, but she caught the pride underneath. "We focus on sustainable energy projects. It started as just me and one partner. Now we have 43 employees and manage over $300 million in assets." Elena had nearly choked on her coffee. "You are a millionaire." Several times over, technically. Brandon had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, which is why 50,000 seemed like appropriate compensation for what I am asking. They had discussed the logistics then. A quick courthouse wedding. They would need to live together for at least a year to satisfy immigration requirements. He would pay her half up front, half after the marriage was finalized and his green card approved. They would maintain separate lives as much as possible, and after 2 years they would quietly divorce. "I want to be clear," Brandon had said, his expression serious. "This is a business arrangement. I am not looking for anything beyond what is necessary to satisfy the legal requirements. You will have your own room, your own space. I will not impose on you in any way." "Good," Elena had replied, ignoring the small flutter in her stomach when he looked at her. "Because I am not interested in complications either." Now, standing in the courthouse, Elena smoothed down her simple white dress. It was not a wedding dress, just a nice dress she had borrowed from her best friend Maya. Brandon stood beside her in a navy suit, looking calm and composed while her heart hammered against her ribs. The judge was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who had clearly performed this ceremony 1,000 times. "Do you, Brandon Marcus Burke, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was steady. "And do you, Elena Marie Torres, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Elena swallowed hard. "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife." The judge looked at them expectantly. You may kiss the bride if you wish." Brandon turned to her, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, maybe. Then he leaned in and pressed a brief, chaste kiss to her lips. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but Elena felt the warmth of it down to her toes. They signed the papers in silence. 20 minutes later, they walked out of the courthouse as husband and wife, the morning sun too bright and cheerful for how surreal everything felt. "I will have the first payment transferred to your account today," Brandon said as they stood on the courthouse steps. "And I have arranged for movers to help you tomorrow. Does 10 in the morning work?" "That is fine." Elena clutched her small purse, suddenly aware that she was now legally bound to this stranger. Do I have your phone number?" He had the grace to look sheepish. "Right, yes. Let me." He pulled out his phone and they exchanged numbers like awkward teenagers. "My place is in Tribeca. I will text you the address. The doorman will be expecting you." "Tribeca," Elena repeated faintly. Of course he lived in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Manhattan. "Elena." Brandon's voice softened slightly. "I know this is strange, but I will do everything I can to make this arrangement work smoothly for both of us." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Then she turned and walked down the steps, her phone already buzzing with a notification. The first payment had arrived. $25,000. Enough to pay off the most pressing medical bills and buy them some breathing room. Elena sat on the subway heading back to her tiny studio apartment in Queens, and tried not to think about the fact that she had just married a millionaire for money. She tried not to think about how his lips had felt against hers, or how his cologne had smelled like cedar and something crisp she could not name. This was business, nothing more. The next morning, Elena stood in front of a gleaming high-rise building in Tribeca with her 2 suitcases and 3 boxes that contained her entire life. The doorman, a distinguished older gentleman named James, greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Burke, welcome. Mr. Burke is expecting you." "He is in apartment 4501. Mrs. Burke." The name sounded foreign to her ears. The elevator was the kind with mirrors and soft lighting that made even her worn jeans and t-shirt look somehow better. It whisked her up silently to the 45th floor, and when the doors opened, Brandon was standing there waiting. "Let me help you with those." He grabbed the 2 heaviest boxes before she could protest. "Did the movers come? I told you I did not need movers." Elena followed him down a hallway with actual artwork on the walls. "This is everything I own." Something shifted in his expression. Not pity exactly, but understanding. "Well, you will have plenty of space here." He was not exaggerating. The apartment was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson River and New Jersey beyond. The living room alone was bigger than her entire studio. Everything was decorated in clean, modern lines with comfortable-looking furniture in shades of gray and blue. "Your room is this way." Brandon led her down a hallway past a gourmet kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. He opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with an en-suite bathroom and a walk-in closet. "I hope this works for you." Elena set down her suitcase, momentarily speechless. The bed was king-sized with a plush white comforter. The windows had the same spectacular view. This is more than fine." "Good." Brandon set the boxes down carefully. "My room is at the other end of the apartment. The kitchen is fully stocked. Help yourself to anything." "I usually leave for work around 7 and get home around 7, sometimes later. Feel free to have friends over, use whatever you need. My only request is that we have dinner together at least twice a week." Elena turned to look at him. "Why? Immigration may do spot checks." "We need to be able to answer questions about each other convincingly. Sharing meals seems like the easiest way to make that happen naturally." He paused, and it is part of maintaining the appearance of a real marriage. Right, the appearance. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. Twice a week. I can do that. I will let you get settled. Brandon moved toward the door, then hesitated. Elena, thank you. I know I said that already, but I mean it. You are helping me keep the life I have built here. After he left, Elena sat on the edge of the obscenely comfortable bed and pulled out her phone. She called her mother, who was resting at home after her latest treatment. Mija, how did it go? Her mother's voice was weak but warm. It went fine, Mama, and the money came through. I paid the hospital bills this morning. We are all caught up. Her mother was quiet for a moment. You are sure about this? Marrying a stranger? It is just for a little while. A business arrangement, then we will divorce and I will have enough money to make sure you get the care you need. Elena forced brightness into her voice. His apartment is amazing. You should see the view. Just be careful, Elena. Even business arrangements involve people. People have hearts. After they hung up, Elena unpacked her meager belongings. Her clothes looked sad and threadbare in the massive closet. Her few books and photographs barely made a dent in the room. But it was hers, at least for the next year or two. The first week was awkward. They tiptoed around each other like polite strangers, which technically they were. Brandon left early and came home late. Elena continued working her 2 jobs, refusing to quit just because she now lived in a luxury apartment. They had their first scheduled dinner on Wednesday. Elena had offered to cook, and Brandon had looked genuinely surprised. You do not have to do that. I like cooking, and it is cheaper than ordering takeout every night. She made chicken enchiladas, her grandmother's recipe, and watched nervously as Brandon took his first bite. His eyes widened. This is incredible. It is just enchiladas, Elena said, but she could not help feeling pleased. They ate in the dining room, which had probably never been used before based on the thin layer of dust Elena had wiped off the table. Brandon asked about her day, her work, her life before all this. She found herself relaxing slightly, telling him about the restaurant where she kept the books, how the owner was a former chef from Mexico City who refused to compromise on authenticity. What about you? Elena asked. How did you end up in New York? Brandon leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand. I studied economics at Oxford. When I graduated, I knew I wanted to work in sustainable investment. But the scene in London was too traditional, too resistant to change. New York felt like a place where someone could build something new. He smiled slightly. I was probably naive, but you succeeded. You have your firm, your employees. I got lucky. I met my business partner, David, at an investment conference. He believed in the vision. We scraped together enough funding to make our first deals, and they paid off. Brandon's expression grew more serious. But none of that matters if I get deported. Everything I have built will disappear. Elena saw the fear underneath his calm exterior. We will make this work. The immigration people will have no reason to doubt us. I hope you are right. Their second dinner that week was takeout Thai food, and they watched a documentary about climate change that Brandon insisted she would find interesting. She did, actually, and found herself debating carbon offset strategies with him until nearly midnight. You have a good mind for this, Brandon said as they cleaned up. Have you ever thought about working in finance? Elena laughed. I have an associate's degree from community college, not exactly Goldman Sachs material. Education is not the same as intelligence. You think strategically. That matters more than where you went to school. It was the nicest thing anyone had said to her in a long time. Weeks passed. They fell into a routine. Brandon stopped working quite so late. Elena found herself cooking more often, enjoying the well-appointed kitchen and the appreciative way Brandon ate her food. They watched movies together on weekends. They argued about politics and laughed at the same stupid internet videos. One evening, Elena came home from her restaurant job to find Brandon pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked stressed in a way she had not seen before. "I understand the timeline. Yes. Yes, I will have everything ready." He hung up and ran his hand through his hair, making it stand up in a way that should not have been as attractive as it was. "What happened?" Elena asked. "Immigration is doing a home visit. Next week." He looked at her, and she saw real worry in his eyes. "They are going to interview us separately, look through the apartment, check that we are actually living as a married couple." Elena set down her bag. "Okay, so we prepare." "It is not that simple. They will ask detailed questions. They will look for inconsistencies. Then we make sure there are none." Elena moved into problem-solving mode. "We need to know basic things about each other. Important dates, family details, habits. We need to look like a couple who actually shares a life." They spent the next 3 days intensively learning about each other. Brandon told her about growing up in Manchester. His parents who divorced when he was 12. His younger sister who taught primary school in Brighton. Elena told him about her childhood in the Bronx, her father who died when she was 16, her mother's battle with cancer that had started 2 years ago. "What is my favorite color?" Brandon quizzed her on the 5th night. "Blue, like your eyes." Elena froze as soon as she said it, feeling her cheeks heat. "I mean, you wear a lot of blue, I noticed." Something flickered in Brandon's expression. "Green, like yours." They stared at each other for a moment too long. Elena looked away first. "What side of the bed do I sleep on?" she asked, trying to get back on track. "I do not know. I have never been in your bedroom." "Right, we should. We should probably know that kind of thing." Brandon cleared his throat. "Left side, I sleep on the left side, you, right side." "Convenient," he said softly. The night before the immigration visit, neither of them could sleep. Elena heard Brandon moving around the apartment at 2 in the morning and found him in the kitchen, making tea. "Could not sleep either?" he asked. "Too nervous." Elena accepted the mug he offered her. "What if they see through us? Then I get deported and you get investigated for immigration fraud." Brandon's attempted joke fell flat. "Sorry, that was not helpful." "What will you do if you have to go back to England?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Start over, I suppose, try to rebuild." "But it will not be the same." He looked at her. "What will you do with the second half of the money? Save it. Make sure my mother is taken care of. Maybe take some business classes." Elena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I never answered the question you asked a few weeks ago. About why I do not work in finance. The truth is, I always wanted to, but I had to drop out of my 4-year program when my dad died. We needed the money. I have been playing catch-up ever since." "I am sorry. That must have been difficult." "It is what it is." Elena shrugged, but she could not quite hide the old pain. "You do what you have to do for family." "Yes," Brandon said quietly. "You do." They sat in the dark kitchen, drinking tea and talking until the sun started to rise over the river. Elena learned that Brandon was afraid of dogs because of a childhood incident, that he played guitar but had not picked one up in years, that he secretly loved trashy reality television. Brandon learned that Elena wanted to visit Spain, that she baked when anxious, that she had a birthmark on her shoulder in the shape of a star. When the immigration officers arrived at 10 the next morning, Elena felt as prepared as she could be. There were 2 of them, a stern woman named Officer Williams and a younger man named Officer Park. They walked through the apartment with clipboards, taking notes on everything. "How long have you been living together?" Officer Williams asked. 5 weeks, Elena answered. "We got married on October 3rd and I moved in the next day." "And where did you meet?" This was the story they had prepared. "Through mutual friends," Brandon said smoothly. At a charity event for environmental causes, Elena was volunteering. It was not entirely a lie. Elena had volunteered at an environmental cleanup day 6 months ago, just not one where she had met Brandon. They were separated for individual interviews. Elena sat in the dining room with Officer Park while Brandon was questioned in the living room. Her hands shook slightly as she folded them in her lap. "Tell me about your husband's morning routine," Officer Park said. "He wakes up at 6. He goes for a run, even when it is raining, which I think is crazy, but he insists it clears his head. He showers, makes coffee, and usually leaves by 7. He takes his coffee black with 1 sugar. He always forgets to eat breakfast, so I started leaving granola bars in his briefcase." That last part was true. She had started doing it 2 weeks ago, and Brandon had texted her a thank you with a smiley face that made her ridiculously happy. "What does he do for work?" "He runs an investment firm, Burke Capital Management. They focus on sustainable energy projects. He is particularly proud of a solar initiative they funded in Nevada." Elena relaxed slightly, talking about something she actually knew. "He works too much, honestly. I keep telling him he needs to delegate more, but he is a perfectionist about some things." "And how would you describe your relationship?" Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "We are still figuring each other out, but he is kind. He listens when I talk. He makes me laugh." She smiled slightly, realizing it was all true. "He is a good man." After 90 minutes of questions, the officers finally prepared to leave. Officer Williams looked at them both standing together in the foyer. "We will be in touch," she said. "Continue to maintain documentation of your shared life. Joint bank accounts, shared bills, photos together. The more evidence, the better." After they left, Elena and Brandon stood in the sudden silence of the apartment. Then Brandon let out a long breath and pulled her into a hug. Elena stiffened in surprise before relaxing into it. He was warm and solid and smelled like the cedar cologne she had come to associate with him. "Thank you," he murmured against her hair. "You were perfect. We both were." Elena pulled back, immediately missing his warmth. "Now we wait." "Now we wait," he agreed. That evening, Brandon suggested they go out to celebrate surviving the interview. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the village, sitting at a corner table with red wine and fresh pasta. It felt like a date, Elena thought, then pushed the idea away. This was not a date. This was just dinner. But Brandon was looking at her in a way he had not before, his eyes lingering on her face in the candlelight. "What?" Elena asked, self-conscious. "You said I make you laugh. Did you mean that?" Elena felt her cheeks warm. They were listening. "I had to make it sound convincing." "Right." "Of course." Brandon looked down at his wine glass. "But for the record, you make me laugh too and think and want to come home earlier than I should." Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. "Brandon, I know this is a business arrangement. I am not supposed to." He trailed off, then met her eyes. "But I would be lying if I said that is all it feels like anymore." Elena opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "We agreed. This was supposed to be simple." "I know what we agreed." Brandon reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. "But somewhere between the immigration interview prep and you leaving granola bars in my briefcase and falling asleep on my shoulder during that documentary about ocean plastics, simple stopped being accurate." "I did not fall asleep," Elena protested weakly. "You snored." "I do not snore," Brandon laughed, and the tension broke slightly. "Okay, you do not snore. You breathe heavily in an extremely cute way." Elena should have pulled her hand away when he finally closed the distance and laced his fingers through hers. She should have reminded him of their agreement, of the complications this would cause. Instead, she squeezed his hand back. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. Probably, Brandon agreed, but I have not been able to stop thinking about you for weeks. We barely know each other. We know each other better than most people who get married. We just did it backwards. He smiled crookedly. And I would very much like to take you on a real date. Not a business dinner. An actual date where I try to impress you and you pretend not to be impressed. Elena laughed despite herself. I am already living in your apartment and legally married to you. The order of operations is completely wrong. So let me take you to dinner tomorrow night. We can start over, do it right. You are asking your wife on a first date. Yes. Elena looked at their joined hands on the table, at his face in the candlelight, at the hope in his eyes. This was dangerous. This was not what she had signed up for. But somewhere along the way, between midnight conversations and shared meals and learning to live in each other's space, something had shifted. Okay, she heard herself say. Tomorrow night. A real date. Brandon's smile was like sunrise. They walked home through the city streets, not quite touching but close enough that their shoulders brushed occasionally. The air was crisp with approaching winter, and the city lights reflected off the windows of buildings around them. Tell me something I do not know about you, Brandon said as they waited for a crosswalk signal. I am terrified of heights, Elena admitted. Which is ironic considering I live on the 45th floor now. You never said anything. I have been dealing with it. Avoiding looking out the windows too much, Brandon stopped walking, turning to face her. Elena, we can request a lower floor. I can look into other apartments. No, I am handling it. Besides, she looked up at the buildings around them. Maybe it is good to face fears sometimes. Maybe. He started walking again. I am afraid of failing, not just in business, but at everything. Being sent back to England feels like the ultimate failure, like I built this castle on sand and it is washing away. That is not failure. That is immigration law being complicated and often unfair. Elena bumped his shoulder with hers. You built something real. No one can take that away from you, no matter where you physically are. You always know what to say. I really do not. I mostly just panic internally and hope the words come out right. Brandon laughed, and the sound made something warm bloom in Elena's chest. Their first official date was at a French restaurant in Soho, the kind with white tablecloths and prices that were not listed on the menu. Elena wore the one nice dress she owned, a simple black number that Maya had convinced her to buy for a wedding 2 years ago. Brandon showed up at her bedroom door to pick her up at 7, even though they lived in the same apartment, wearing a suit that made her mouth go dry. You look beautiful, he said, and the way he looked at her made her believe it. You clean up okay yourself. Elena grabbed her borrowed clutch, trying to calm her racing heart. At dinner, they talked like they had not spent the last 6 weeks living together. Brandon asked about her childhood, her dreams, what she wanted from life beyond just surviving. Elena found herself telling him about her secret love of poetry, about how she used to write before life got too busy and exhausting. You still have any of them? The poems? Brandon asked. Hidden in a notebook somewhere. They are probably terrible. I doubt that. I would like to read them someday, if you would let me. No one had ever asked to read her poetry before. Elena felt something crack open in her chest, something she had kept carefully locked away. Maybe, she said softly. Someday. Brandon told her about the guitar he kept in his closet, about songs he used to write, about dreams of being a musician before practical considerations took over. They talked about the versions of themselves they might have been in different circumstances, in different lives. You ever regret the choices you made? Elena asked as they shared a chocolate dessert that was almost too pretty to eat, some of them. But not this one. Brandon's eyes met hers. Even if the circumstances were unusual, I do not regret meeting you. We have only known each other 6 weeks. I know, but some people just fit into your life like they were always meant to be there. He reached across the table for her hand. You feel like that to me. Elena's throat felt tight. You feel like that to me too. They walked home slowly, taking the long way through Washington Square Park. Street performers played music on corners. Couples walked hand in hand. Brandon stopped under a street lamp and turned to face her. Can I kiss you? He asked. A real kiss this time, not for a judge or immigration officers, just because I really want to. Elena answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deepened as Brandon's arms came around her waist and pulled her closer. She tasted wine on his lips, felt the scrape of stubble against her chin, and thought that she had never been kissed quite like this before. Like she was precious. Like she mattered. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Brandon rested his forehead against hers. I am completely falling for you, he whispered. That was not part of the plan, but I cannot seem to help it. Me too, Elena admitted. I am terrified, but me too. They went home together, hands intertwined, and everything felt different now. Brandon walked her to her bedroom door like a proper gentleman, even though the logistics were absurd. Good night, Elena, he said, kissing her forehead. Good night, Brandon. Elena lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding. She was falling in love with her husband. Her fake husband, who she had married for money, who was only supposed to be a business arrangement. This was not how this was supposed to go. But as she drifted off to sleep, she could not stop smiling. The next few weeks were a revelation. They stopped pretending to maintain separate lives. Brandon came home earlier. Elena cut back her hours at the grocery store, accepting Brandon's offer to help supplement her lost income. They cooked together, their movements in the kitchen becoming a dance as they learned each other's rhythms. They watched movies curled up on the couch, Elena's head on Brandon's shoulder, his arm around her waist. They went on more dates, to museums and Broadway shows and late-night diners. Brandon met Maya, who pulled Elena aside and whispered, Girl, if you do not keep that man, I will question your sanity. Elena met David, Brandon's business partner, at a company dinner. David was a cheerful man in his 40s with an easy laugh and sharp eyes that missed nothing. So you are the famous Elena, David said, shaking her hand. Brandon has not shut up about you for weeks. I do not talk about you that much, Brandon protested, his ears turning slightly red. He does, David's wife Rachel confirmed with a warm smile. It is actually very sweet. Elena learned what Brandon was like in his element, talking passionately about investment strategies and sustainability metrics with people who spoke his language. She watched him command a room full of investors, confident and articulate, and felt a surge of pride that this brilliant, driven man wanted her. Brandon came to the restaurant where Elena worked, sitting at the bar and charming her boss with questions about recipes and business management. He looked completely out of place in his expensive suit among the worn tables and faded decorations, but he did not seem to care. You are good at this, he told her as she showed him her bookkeeping system. Really good. These books are immaculate. It is not rocket science. No, but it is organized and accurate and shows real understanding of how money flows through a business. Have you ever considered getting your bachelor's degree? Elena closed the ledger. I told you, I had to drop out. I do not have time or money for college. But what if you did? Brandon leaned against the bar. What if time and money were not factors? Then I would study business management or accounting, something practical. Elena shrugged. But that is not reality. Maybe it could be. Before she could ask what he meant, her boss called her away to handle a supplier issue. They had not slept together yet, despite the growing tension between them. Elena was still sleeping in her room. Brandon in his, though they spent most evenings together until one of them reluctantly said goodnight. The restraint was killing her, but there was something sweet about the slow burn, the anticipation. One Saturday morning, Elena woke to find Brandon had made breakfast. Actual breakfast with pancakes and bacon and fresh fruit, all laid out on the dining room table. "What is this?" she asked, still in her pajamas. "I felt like cooking. Also, I have something for you." Brandon looked nervous, which was unusual for him. He handed her an envelope. Inside was information about a business program at NYU, a 4-year degree that could be completed part-time, and a check for the full tuition. Elena stared at it, her heart pounding. "Brandon, I cannot accept this." "Why not?" "Because it is too much. Because we have a business arrangement and this is." She gestured helplessly at the check. "This is beyond that. Elena, we stopped being a business arrangement the moment I kissed you in Washington Square Park." Brandon moved closer, taking her hands. "Maybe before that, and I want to invest in you, in your future. You have so much potential and you should not have to put your dreams on hold because of circumstances. But what if we do not work out? What if when all this is over we go our separate ways? Then what? Then you still have a degree and a future ahead of you. The money is not conditional on us. It is a gift because I care about you and believe in you." He squeezed her hands. "Please, let me do this." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever believed in her like this. "This is crazy." "Probably, but most of the best things are." She kissed him then, standing in the dining room in her pajamas, kissing him like her life depended on it. Brandon lifted her easily, setting her on the edge of the table, and the kiss turned heated. His hands slid into her hair. Her legs wrapped around his waist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Brandon's eyes were dark with want. "Elena," he said, his voice rough, "tell me to stop if you want me to stop." "I do not want you to stop," she pulled him back to her. "I have not wanted you to stop for weeks." Brandon kissed her neck, her collarbone, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp. "We should move this to a bedroom." "Yours or mine?" "Ours," he said, and the words sent a thrill through her. They barely made it to his room. Brandon was gentle and demanding all at once, learning what made her gasp and arch and call his name. Elena discovered that her composed, controlled husband came undone completely in bed, whispering her name like a prayer. They fit together perfectly, like they had been designed for each other. Afterward, they lay tangled in his sheets, sweaty and satisfied, and Elena felt like she could finally breathe properly for the first time in years. "That was." She started. "Yeah," Brandon agreed, pulling her closer. "It really was. So I guess I am moving into your room now." "Our room," he corrected, kissing her temple. "And yes, if you want to." Elena thought about her room down the hall, about the space she had carefully maintained as a barrier between them. "I want to." "Good, because I do not plan on letting you go far from now on." They spent the rest of the weekend barely leaving the bedroom. Brandon showed Elena exactly how creative he could be when he put his mind to something. Elena learned that she liked being the one to make her controlled, composed husband lose that control. On Monday morning, they moved her things into his room. Their room. Elena hung her clothes next to his expensive suits. Her worn paperbacks went on the shelf next to his hardcover business books. It should have felt strange, but instead it felt like coming home. "I could get used to this," Brandon said, watching her from the doorway. "Waking up together, waking up with you, there is a difference." He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "I love you, Elena." The words hung in the air. They had not said it yet, though it had been hovering between them for days. Elena turned in his arms, looking up at his face. "I love you too, even though this is completely insane and we did everything backwards and wrong. We did it our way." Brandon kissed her softly. And I would not change a thing. 2 weeks later, the letter came. Elena was at class when Brandon called her, his voice shaking slightly. They approved it. The green card, it is approved. Elena sat down on a bench outside the NYU building, her legs suddenly weak. Really? Really? I am not being deported, I can stay. Brandon let out a shaky laugh. We did it. We did it, Elena echoed. There was a pause. Then Brandon said quietly, You know what this means, right? The terms of our agreement are fulfilled. You are free to go if you want. I will transfer the second payment today and we can start the divorce proceedings whenever you want. Elena's heart clenched. Is that what you want? God, no. The words came out fierce. But I want you to have the choice. I want you to stay because you want to, not because you are legally obligated or financially dependent. So I am giving you an out, if you want it. Elena looked around at the NYU campus, at students rushing to class, at the life she was building, a life that Brandon had helped make possible. But more than that, a life she wanted to share with him. I do not want an out, she said. I want you, I want this. I want our weird backwards marriage that somehow became real. She heard him exhale on the other end of the line. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. Elena smiled even though he could not see her. Come home early tonight. We should celebrate properly. I will be there in an hour. Brandon was as good as his word. Elena came home to find the apartment filled with flowers, champagne chilling on the counter, and Brandon looking nervous and hopeful in equal measure. I know we are already married, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. But we did it for all the wrong reasons. So I want to ask you properly this time. He got down on one knee right there in the living room, opening the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. Elena Marie Torres Burke, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. You make me laugh and think and want to be better. You believed in me when you had no reason to. You took a ridiculous chance on a stranger with a crazy proposition, and somehow we found something real in all the pretending. His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright. Will you stay married to me? Not for a green card or money or convenience, but because we choose each other, because we love each other, because we are already a team and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Elena was definitely crying now. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Brandon slid the ring onto her finger next to the cheap silver band they had bought for the courthouse wedding. It caught the light, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall. I love you, Elena said, pulling him up and into a kiss. I love you so much. They made love on the couch, then moved to the bedroom, then eventually made it to the shower. By the time they finally got around to the champagne, it was late and they were both exhausted and happier than Elena had ever been. What do we do now? She asked, curled against his side in bed. Anything we want. Brandon stroked her hair lazily. Live our lives, build our future. I was thinking we should take a trip, somewhere warm. You said you wanted to see Spain. I have school. Winter break is in 3 weeks. We could go then. Elena traced patterns on his chest, thinking, I have never been out of the country. Then it is definitely time. Brandon caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. I want to show you the world, Elena. Everything you have been missing while you were too busy surviving. They went to Barcelona in December, spending 2 weeks wandering through Gaudi's architecture and eating tapas, and making love in a small hotel room with a balcony overlooking the Gothic Quarter. Brandon was patient with Elena's terrible Spanish and delight in every new experience. They held hands walking down Las Ramblas. They watched the sunset from Park Güell. They were disgustingly, blissfully in love. Thank you for this, Elena said one evening as they sat at a beachside restaurant, her feet buried in the sand. For what? All of it. The trip, the belief in me, the love. She looked at him in the golden light of the setting sun, For seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible, Elena. You were just waiting for someone to look properly. Brandon leaned over and kissed her. And I am the lucky one who got to look. They returned to New York as the city was gearing up for Christmas. Elena had finished her first semester at NYU with straight A's. Brandon's firm had closed a major deal on a wind farm project in Texas. Her mother's latest scans had come back clear. Everything was falling into place in a way Elena had never dared to hope for. On Christmas Eve, they hosted dinner at their apartment. Elena's mother came, looking healthier than she had in months, along with Maya and her boyfriend. David and Rachel came with their 2 kids. Brandon's sister flew in from England as a surprise, a petite woman named Bella who immediately pulled Elena into a hug. "Thank you for making my brother happy," Bella whispered. "I have not seen him like this in years." The apartment was full of warmth and laughter and the smell of Elena's cooking. She had made a feast, combining her family's traditional dishes with some of Brandon's British favorites. Brandon kept finding excuses to touch her, pulling her close as they moved through the party, kissing her temple or squeezing her hand. After everyone left and they were cleaning up the kitchen together, Brandon said, "This is what I want every Christmas. This full, loud, happy chaos. Yeah. Yeah, with you, and maybe someday with kids running around causing even more chaos." Elena nearly dropped the plate she was washing. "Kids?" Brandon looked suddenly uncertain. "I mean, not right away, we have time. But eventually, if you want them, do you want them?" Elena thought about it. A year ago, she could not have imagined bringing children into her precarious, struggling life. But now, with Brandon beside her and a future that looked bright instead of desperate, she could picture it. A little girl with his eyes, a boy with her stubborn chin. "Yeah," she said softly. "Eventually, I want them." Brandon's face lit up. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. "I love you so damn much. I love you too, even though you are terrible at washing dishes." "I am not terrible, you missed a spot." They finished cleaning together, bickering and laughing, and Elena thought that this was happiness. This ordinary moment in their kitchen, tired and full and completely in love. Time passed in that strange way it does when you are happy, both too fast and just right. Elena continued her studies, discovering she had a real talent for business strategy. Brandon's firm grew, adding new projects and employees. They traveled when they could to California and Montana and England to visit Bella. They hosted dinners and went to galleries and built a life that was fully, completely theirs. 2 years after their courthouse wedding, they threw a real wedding celebration. Nothing too big, just their closest friends and family in a garden venue upstate. Elena wore an actual wedding dress this time, and when Brandon saw her walking down the aisle, he did not even try to hide his tears. "I do," Elena said when the officiant asked, meaning it with her whole heart. "I do," Brandon echoed, his voice thick with emotion. They kissed to applause and cheers, and this time, there was nothing fake or for show about it. This was real as anything Elena had ever known. At the reception, as they danced their first dance to a song Brandon had picked because the lyrics reminded him of her, Elena looked around at the people celebrating with them. Her mother, healthy and glowing. Maya, crying happy tears. David and Rachel and their kids. Bella and a date she had brought. All the threads of their lives woven together into something beautiful. "What are you thinking?" Brandon murmured, holding her close as they swayed. "That I cannot believe this is my life. That I married you for money and a green card, and somehow I got everything I never knew I wanted. Funny how that works." Brandon kissed her forehead. "I hired you to solve a problem, and you became the solution to every question I did not know I was asking. That is incredibly cheesy." "You love it. I really do. 3 years after that, Elena graduated from NYU with her bachelor's degree in business management. Brandon was in the front row, cheering louder than anyone when her name was called. Her mother sat beside him, crying proud tears. Elena walked across that stage knowing she had earned this. Not just the degree, but the life that had made it possible. That night, over celebration dinner at the restaurant where Elena used to keep books and now consulted on business strategy, Brandon pulled out another small box. "Please tell me that is not another engagement ring," Elena joked. "I am running out of fingers, not a ring." Brandon opened it to reveal a key. "It is to our new house." Elena stared at him. "Our what?" "I found a place in Brooklyn. A brownstone with a garden and enough space for a family. I know we have been talking about it, about kids and settling down properly. And the apartment is great, but it is not really a home for a family." Brandon looked nervous like he had when he proposed for real. "What do you think?" Elena took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. "A house. A real house where they could build a life, raise children, grow old together. I think yes. I think absolutely yes." They moved in a month later. The house was beautiful. A classic brownstone with hardwood floors and high ceilings, and a small backyard that Elena immediately started planning to fill with plants. They spent weekends furniture shopping and painting walls and making the space theirs. 6 months after moving in, Elena had news of her own. She waited until Brandon got home from work, practically vibrating with nervous excitement. "I have something to tell you," she said as soon as he walked through the door. Brandon set down his briefcase, immediately attentive. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. Really, really right." Elena took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are having a baby." For a moment, Brandon just stared at her. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are having a baby," he repeated, setting her down gently like she was made of glass. "Elena, we are going to be parents. I know, are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. Brandon kissed her, then dropped to his knees and kissed her stomach. "Hello in there. I am your dad and I already love you so much." Elena ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full it ached. This man. This beautiful, wonderful man who had started as a stranger with a business proposition and become her entire world. The pregnancy was not easy. Elena dealt with morning sickness that lasted all day and exhaustion that hit her like a truck. But Brandon was there for all of it, holding her hair back when she was sick, rubbing her feet when they swelled, talking to their growing baby every night before bed. "You are going to be so loved," he told her stomach in the 7th month. "Your mom is the strongest, smartest, most beautiful person I have ever met, and you are so lucky to have her." "You are making me cry again," Elena said, wiping her eyes. "Everything makes me cry now. I am just telling the truth." Brandon kissed her belly, then moved up to kiss her properly. "I love you both so much." Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in May, after 14 hours of labor that tested every bit of Elena's strength. But the moment they placed that tiny, screaming baby in her arms, everything else fell away. "Hi, sweet girl," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We have been waiting for you." Brandon stood beside the hospital bed, looking at his wife and daughter with such awe and love that Elena fell in love with him all over again. "She is perfect," he said, his voice rough. "You are both perfect." They named her Sophia Marie Burke. She had Elena's dark hair and Brandon's blue eyes, and from day one she had both of them wrapped completely around her tiny finger. Those first few months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes, and a love so fierce it was almost frightening. Elena had never been so exhausted or so happy. Brandon turned out to be a natural father, walking the floors at 3 a.m. with Sophia, singing her the lullabies his own mother had sung to him. On the nights when Elena was overwhelmed and crying from exhaustion, Brandon would take the baby and send her to bed. On the days when Brandon was drowning in work stress, Elena would handle everything at home and bring him tea and remind him that they were a team. They were partners in every sense of the word, and watching Brandon with their daughter made Elena love him in new and deeper ways. Sophia was 6 months old when Maya brought it up. They were having coffee at the house, Sophia napping in her bassinet nearby. "You ever think about how this all started?" Maya asked. "The Craigslist ad, the fake marriage, all of it." Elena looked at her sleeping daughter, at the house they had made a home, at the life they had built. "Sometimes it feels like a different lifetime. You got really lucky. That could have gone so wrong in so many ways." "I know. Believe me, I know," Elena smiled. "But sometimes I think it was not luck. Like we were supposed to find each other, even if the path was unconventional. Brandon needed to stay in the country to build his life. I needed money to save my mom. But what we both really needed was each other, and we just did not know it yet." "That is either really romantic or really crazy." "Maybe both," Elena laughed. "But I would not change a thing, not one single thing." That night, after Sophia was asleep and they were finally alone, Elena told Brandon what Maya had said. "She is right that we were lucky," Brandon said, pulling Elena close on the couch. "But I think you are right too. I think we were supposed to find each other. Maybe not through a Craigslist ad for a green card marriage, but somehow. You believe in fate. I did not used to. But then I met you." Brandon kissed her temple. "And now I believe that some things are just meant to be." Elena tilted her head up to kiss him properly. "I love you. Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate woman who answered your crazy ad. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being brave enough to bet on a stranger." Brandon's eyes were soft. "Thank you for becoming my wife, my partner, my best friend. Thank you for Sophia. Thank you for everything." They sat there on the couch, wrapped around each other, and Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that first awkward coffee shop meeting to the courthouse, wedding to the moment, everything shifted from pretend to real. All the dinners and conversations and slow building of trust, the immigration interview that felt like a test they might fail, the first real kiss, the first real fight, the making up, the building of a life, piece by piece, choice by choice. She thought about how scared she had been that day in October, standing in front of a judge and marrying a stranger. How she could never have imagined that the practical, business-minded man beside her would become the love of her life. How a desperate choice made out of financial necessity would lead to everything she had ever wanted but never dared to dream of. "What are you thinking about?" Brandon asked, noticing her faraway expression. "How much can change in a few years? How different my life is now from what I expected." "Better or worse?" Elena looked around their living room, at the photos on the walls of their wedding and travels, and Sophia, at the life they had built together through choice and effort and love. "So much better," she said. "Better than I ever imagined possible." Brandon pulled her closer, and they stayed like that until Sophia's cry came through the baby monitor. They looked at each other and laughed. "I will get her," Brandon said, standing up. "You stay here and relax." Elena watched him go upstairs, hearing him greeting their daughter in that soft voice he reserved just for her. She thought about the man who had placed that Craigslist ad all those years ago, desperate and running out of options. She thought about the woman who had answered it, equally desperate, seeing only dollar signs and a solution to impossible problems. Neither of them could have known that they were answering an ad for so much more than a green card or money. They were answering an ad for a partner, a best friend, a love that would change everything. Convenience had become forever in the most unexpected way, and Elena would not have it any other way. 2 years later, they stood in that same brownstone, but now the walls held more photos and Sophia was running around, a tiny hurricane of energy and joy. Elena was pregnant again, 5 months along with a boy this time. Brandon's firm had just been named one of the top sustainable investment companies in the country. Elena had started her own consulting business, helping small restaurants and businesses with their financial planning. They were hosting Thanksgiving, the house full of everyone they loved. Elena's mother was teaching Sophia how to make empanadas in the kitchen. Bella had moved to New York and was dating David's brother. Maya was engaged. The house was loud and chaotic and perfect. Brandon found Elena in the dining room, setting the table for their crowd. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands settling on her growing belly. "Our son is going to be a soccer player," he said. "He will not stop kicking. He gets that from you. You cannot sit still either." Elena leaned back against him. "Are you happy?" deliriously. Almost annoyingly happy. Brandon turned her around to face him. "Are you?" Elena looked at him, this man who had been a stranger with a proposition and became her entire world. She thought about everything they had built together, every choice they had made, every moment that led them here. "I am so happy I can barely stand it," she said honestly. "You gave me everything, Brandon, a future, a family, a life I love. We gave each other everything." Brandon kissed her softly. "Equal partners, remember, always." From the kitchen came a crash and Sophia's delighted laughter. They looked at each other and hurried to see what their daughter had gotten into now, hand in hand, together. This was their life, built on the strangest of foundations but solid and real and theirs. A life that started with a desperate Craigslist ad, and a courthouse wedding had become something neither of them could have imagined or planned for. It became a love story. It became a family. It became forever. And as Elena helped clean up whatever mess Sophia had made, Brandon cracking jokes beside her while their son kicked in her belly and their house filled with the people they loved, she knew that every choice that led her here had been worth it. She had married a millionaire for a green card, expecting nothing but money and a business arrangement. Instead, she got everything.